I caught you red-handed with this powder at my airport. You are not going anywhere.
You know, I've seen a lot of ugly things in my 15 years as a federal inspector: corruption, corner cutting, stuff that could ground planes and risk lives. But I never thought I would become the subject of the ugliest failure of all. This isn't just about a bad day at the office, or even a lawsuit. This is the story of how a little bag of powdered sugar, a racist airport manager, and one perfectly timed camera shot took down an entire security apparatus and changed my life forever. My name is Dr. Elias Vance, and my job is to travel the country, unannounced, to make sure every major transportation hub is safe and compliant with federal regulations. Think of it as a surprise audit, but instead of checking books, I'm checking lives. That morning, I landed in Liberty Field International, in what felt like a perfect, crisp Colorado morning, ready for a standard compliance review, triggered, ironically, by a flurry of recent, hushed complaints about discriminatory passenger treatment. The irony, I promise you, was not lost on me later. I was dressed for my role, a sharp navy suit, my standard issue federal carry-on, the one with all the sophisticated testing gear, and my official credentials tucked away, only to be shown when necessary. It's the protocol: blend in, observe the natural environment, then reveal yourself when it's time to inspect. I was simply observing the flow near the main gate A4, documenting staff interactions, when the whole thing just blew up in my face. I hear this voice, loud, booming, a sound designed to command attention and intimidate. "Hey, you, what the hell do you think you're doing loitering here, boy?" I paused, and I swear, the entire first-class lounge seemed to freeze around me. This guy, this airport manager, Randall Finch, steps right into my path. He's got that look, you know, that puffed-up, chest-out authority that only comes from a small man in a slightly too big uniform. His face was just twisted up, a mask of genuine contempt, and he didn't even try to hide it. "This is the first-class boarding area," he snarled, his finger pointing aggressively, practically stabbing the air between us. "It's for paying customers, not some thug looking for trouble. Get your ass back to the general seating or I'm calling Airport PD right now." I'm Dr. Elias Vance. I've got 15 years with the Federal Aviation Authority, and I've dealt with senators and CEOs who were easier to handle than this guy. But my training kicked in: remain calm, document the incident mentally, do not escalate. I just stood there, perfectly still, which, naturally, only enraged Randall more. He got closer, invading my space, his breath smelling faintly of stale coffee and superiority. "Are you deaf?" I said. "Move, gutter trash. You think you can just wander around like you own the place?" I almost laughed. Own the place, buddy. My report could put this entire operation on probation. But all I did was subtly adjust my jacket, and for a split second, the metallic gleam of my federal badge on its lanyard caught the fluorescent light. He missed it, completely consumed by his little racist power trip. He had no idea he was about to make the most catastrophically expensive mistake of his entire miserable life. See, what I didn't know then, what the frozen passengers pulling out their phones didn't know, was that Randall had been setting the stage long before I even stepped off the plane. That morning, at 6:15 a.m., long before the first major flight rush, the security cameras, which I would later review, showed Randall moving with a strange, calculated purpose. He slipped into the airport's dedicated evidence storage room, the one locked down tight for confiscated items. He knew exactly what he was after: a small plastic baggie of white powder. Cocaine, seized in an arrest 3 weeks earlier. He pulled it out, slipped it into his jacket pocket, and muttered something to himself, the kind of ugly, self-justifying whisper that only bigots use. Time to clean up this airport from the undesirable elements. People need to learn their place. He was completely, criminally unaware that every single move was being logged and recorded, down to the timestamp. He came back to the terminal, the planted evidence burning a figurative hole in his pocket. This wasn't the first time he'd engaged in harassment. We later found a paper trail, 3 formal grievances buried by the prior airport administration, who, as is often the case, prioritized firm management over human decency. But this was the first time he was going to commit a federal crime to make his point. He saw me, a well-dressed black man with an expensive carry-on, and every ugly preconceived notion in his head fired at once. In his twisted logic, he wasn't framing me. He was protecting the airport from a potential threat. He was a hero. He positioned himself near the gate, watching me like a hawk, his fingers tracing the outline of the plastic baggie. "Time to clean house," he whispered again, totally confident that the airport brass would applaud his instincts. He was about to find out that the man he pegged as a thug was, in fact, a federal inspector with the power to initiate a complete shutdown of the entire facility. Randall walks up to me again, all swagger and false confidence. "Sir, I need to see some identification," he announced, making sure his voice carried over the boarding announcements. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area." I looked up from my notepad. I was literally jotting down a mental note about his own discriminatory behavior. "I'm sorry, what reports? I've been standing here quietly reviewing documents." "Don't play dumb with me," he sneered, moving in close. "I know your type. You're probably here chasing the place, looking for what you can steal. Or worse." The racist venom hung in the air. Passengers were staring now, phones held ready. The gate agent, a sweet-looking woman named Chloe, visibly looked away, embarrassed. "Listen, boy," he continued, raising his voice. "I've been working airports for 20 years. I can spot trouble from a mile away. And you reek of it." My calmness was beginning to crack, but my professionalism held firm. "Sir, I'm going to need to see your supervisor. This interaction seems highly irregular." He let out a mockingly loud, theatrical laugh. "My supervisor? I am the supervisor here. Genius. Airport Operations Manager Randall Finch. And right now, you're my problem to solve." The crowd grew. I saw a businessman, recording, whisper to his wife, "That airport guy is way out of line." Randall, feeding off the attention, puffed out his chest even more. He loved this. He was performing. "Now, sir, I'm going to need to search your bag," he declared, his voice full of performance art. "Airport security protocols. You look like the type who might be carrying something you shouldn't." I finally spoke, my voice calm but laced with steel. "I'm happy to cooperate, but I require documented, reasonable suspicion and your written authorization for a search. That's standard protocol." "Reasonable suspicion?" Randall's face twisted into an ugly smile. "How about this for reasonable suspicion? You don't belong here, you're acting nervous, and frankly, people like you are usually up to no good." Sound cue. Music drops out for the sound of a zipper. Then a heartbeat-like thudding starts. I realized resistance would only make it worse, so I placed my carry-on on the nearest unoccupied chair. "I will comply with your request. But I require everything to be documented and witnessed. This entire interaction is highly irregular." "Oh, it'll be documented, all right," he smirked, a smirk that Director Thorne's voice, firm, unwavering, was the final stake through Randall's fantasy. He was still standing there, clutching the baggie of powder, which I swear must have felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in his shaking hand. "Inspector Vance," Director Thorne said through the phone, her voice now directed at me. "What is your status? We've been expecting your preliminary report." I took the phone, my composure fully restored. "Director Thorne, this is Inspector Vance, badge 9021. I am currently being detained by airport personnel who have planted evidence in my inspection equipment." Randall Finch started spiraling, yelling to the crowd that it was a fake, a setup, a staged con job, but Director Thorne's next words cut through his delusion like a hot knife through butter. "Officer Carter," she instructed, her voice crisp and commanding, Inspector Vance is conducting a safety inspection under Federal Mandate 14 CFR. Part 139. Preserve all evidence and documentation. And Officer Carter, arrest anyone who continues to interfere with Inspector Vance's duties. Randall Finch's legs nearly gave out. I calmly reached into my suit jacket and retrieved my official FAA credentials. The badge, the federal seal, my name, it was unmistakable. I held it up for the stunned onlookers and Officer Carter to see. As I was trying to explain, I said, looking right at Maria, the prior security chief who had just rushed over. I'm here conducting a compliance inspection of your airport security protocols. Specifically, I was investigating reports of discriminatory treatment of passengers. The irony was brutal, immediate, and utterly clear to everyone watching. The federal inspector investigating discrimination had just been flagrantly discriminated against by the very manager he was meant to be investigating. Maria looked at my credentials, her face white with shock. Inspector Vance, we had no idea. Mr. Finch never mentioned any federal inspection. It's unannounced, I replied simply. Standard protocol. Randall, still clutching the evidence, was desperate. But you had drugs. I found drugs in your bag. I fixed him with a cold stare. Mr. Finch, what you're holding is industrial testing powder, used for calibrating detection equipment. It's standard FAA inspection material, clearly labeled in my official kit. Officer Carter examined the baggie. Sure enough, there was a tiny, barely noticeable label Randall had missed in his rush to commit a felony, FAA testing compound. Not for unauthorized use. The businessman who was recording yelled out in disbelief. He tried to frame a federal inspector with the inspector's own testing materials. Jesus Christ. Randall's world was spinning. I didn't know. I thought he looked suspicious. Suspicious how, Mr. Finch? I asked quietly, letting the question hang there like a loaded gun. What exactly made me look suspicious? He stuttered, his mouth opening and closing. You were in the first-class area, and He couldn't finish the sentence. He knew that any explanation would be an admission of racial profiling. And that confession was no longer just a violation of company policy. It was a federal civil rights crime. Within the hour, Liberty Field International became a federal crime scene. FBI agents from the Civil Rights Division, FAA investigators, and Department of Transportation officials swarmed the terminal. Special Agent Harper Reed, a sharp woman from the FBI, took over. Mr. Finch, Agent Reed said, her voice cold and assessing. You are under arrest for evidence tampering, filing false police reports, interfering with a federal investigation, and violation of civil rights under color of authority. Randall tried to stammer out the old lie. I never violated anyone's civil rights. I treated him exactly like I'd treat anyone suspicious. Suspicious how? Agent Reed asked, pulling out her recorder. Please explain exactly what made Inspector Vance suspicious to you. He couldn't speak. Then Maria, the security chief, approached Agent Reed with a thick file. Agent Reed, I've pulled Mr. Finch's personnel records. There have been 17 formal complaints about discriminatory behavior in the past 3 years. Airport administration buried most of them. They actually promoted him twice during this period. The file was damning. Complaint after complaint detailing racial profiling, unnecessary searches, and verbal harassment, all documented. All ignored by a management team who valued his firm style. The final nail in Randall's coffin came when Agent Reed reviewed the security footage. Mr. Finch, she said, pointing to the monitor showing him at 6:15 a.m., the timestamp shows you removed this evidence 30 minutes before Inspector Vance even arrived at the airport. This demonstrates clear premeditation. His legs finally gave out. He collapsed into a chair. His face gray. He hadn't acted on impulse. He had planned to frame someone before he even knew who his target would be. I watched him, and I finally spoke one last time, cutting through his hysteria. Mr. Finch, let me explain something to you. I've been an FAA inspector for 15 years.